Earlier today, I did the first Terrible Tuesday that I've done in a long time. It wasn't that terrible, it was just 2 of 2. That is where you're doing a work to rest, or bleed that second rest into a very, very long rest. So you're doing 2 work periods. That is going to be a series. You take a very, very long rest period and do another series. So it's basically 4 total work periods. And I had this plan for a while. Right now in my program where Mike Ranfone Training Systems handles all of my programming, we talked a few weeks ago about adding an intense day along with all the lifting that we're doing. So we're still going 5-6 days a week, but we hadn't had a dedicated cardio day like this, where I was just doing whatever I could on the back end of the workouts or on any of the program off days. But I felt like, I wanted to do some things more explosive, especially for the longer time period, just something I felt like I wanted to do. And that's where my program is at. I kind of do what I want to do. Obviously, I do what I'm told in terms of Mike filtering what I talk about with him, and then he puts it into a plan. Anyway, the reason we talk about it a little bit is almost as a review from EPP, but I had a client who's really, really focused on VO2 as it relates to some of the just overall health benefits. And there's no questioning that there's high value. I do know, I still feel very, very strongly that you do not have to always have a high VO2 to have significant health value. We see that in a significant amount of particularly short repeat sprint athletes or some of our short sprints and explosive athletes. Now, they'll probably have higher VO2, just what makes them a great athlete, but it doesn't show the same health deleterious impact than somebody else. So it's clear that a high VO2 is useful. It is also at least clear in my mind, based on what I have seen in my own bias, that you don't always have to have this high VO2. But of course, there's good return on your performance benefit, especially if you never do it. That's why I wanted to get back into it. So there's also some other effects there that our Terrible Tuesday is going to deliver. So as I mapped this out originally, we talked about 30 to 80 seconds. On the lower end, even 30 to 60 really is very, very global. And there's other ways to map out your Terrible Tuesday, but the easiest way to understand is by just doing time. And you're going explosively, but you use, which I completely made up, which is known as the even effort method. You got the maximal effort method, repetition method, et cetera, et cetera. Well, the even effort method means you're never going to truly hit your top end over this 30 to 60 seconds or even 80, but you're gonna try to get a little bit of a flying start and kind of find where you can keep it. And there's a number of reasons for that. One of which, if you just kind of get out as fast as you can and then crawl across the finish line, on that back half, in theory, you are no longer using the same motor strategy. Now, the bike is very, very forgiving and also not a lot of carryover to other things, especially if you're running. That being said, you're not doing what you're trying to do. You are trying to have maximum output and you are delivering, maximum effort. That's not happening on this downside. So if you keep it here, which typically might be, the average or a little bit around that, then you also have a chance to put a gut check. And that's exactly what I did, which I expected, because in the first time going back to, really sprinting for 30 seconds, but being able to keep relatively the same miles per hour and high. Now, of course, you go 30 seconds and keep it at 20. It's not a problem. I'm trying to keep it as high as I possibly can without that dip on the back end. That's what I'm going to call the even effort method. Then I started off between 29 and 30, then went 30 to 31, then 30 to 31. And then I'm like, okay, I still feel pretty good. I'm going to try to get this one up to 32. So you had a chance. You always have a chance to get better. If you're always going like this, you're constantly just bringing your best, surviving, checking the box, certainly burning calories, if you will, but you're not giving yourself an opportunity to actually get faster. And to keep 32 the whole time will likely, if you did have to do this big parabola, you'd probably have a higher top end. So that's why we're going there. And clearly, if you're doing that, you're approaching your VO2 max. Now, the 80 seconds with full recovery, 5 repetitions, was stuff that Legend is, or I'm not sure if it's actually something that we can find in the literature, where Matveyev showed that you can still do these maximum effort sprints, certainly getting above 5, and that they would have this latency period of adaptation, meaning they would last up to a month. So you really only had to do the 80 seconds one time per month, and that probably would not challenge some of the patterns that were more specific to the sport. So you keep the VO2 high as possible for a month by getting those 80-second sprints. And again, you can do it on anything. You can do it running, you can do it bike, you can do a row or whatever it might be. Kettlebell stuff, crawling, uphill, all these things are going to be very, very valuable. Now, the whole impact there is, well, how much rest are you taking in order for this not only to have value for VO2, but also even out as a moderate to low lactic event? Because clearly when you're bringing the heat, even though the limiting factor is aerobic, you are clearly spending significant, right at that border, right at that barrier of building up lactic byproducts. In this case, I picked 3 minutes rest. I would not go any lower. I would go up to 5 minutes. So my next workout, I may have a choice. Do I want to shoot for 32, 33 for all four? Do I want to shoot for the same 30 to 32, but then add a series? Or do I want to add a repetition to the series? Or do I want to get up to 5 minutes rest? So that 80 seconds research where you would need even longer recovery so you get that same huge effort for 80 seconds was research that also showed, they kind of found Matveyev stuff, and then they went back and showed that it worked again. So it's very, very useful, even though my client is looking at 4 minutes, 8 minutes, 12 minutes of the same relative even effort. Now, when you're going that long, I'm not sure you're going to be able to target 1 mile per hour. The range might be a little bit bigger, but I would look for to do the same thing. And what I've asked him to consider is 4 minutes of that effort, even effort, a very, very high level, and then 4 minutes of coast. And then let's bring the heat again. That's twice. Let's go 3 times. 3 times, 8 minutes, 24-minute workout. Can we go even longer? I think that is also going to be very effective for VO2. I think if you did 6 minutes, and maybe if you did 3 minutes rest, this is where you can get into some of these negative ratios. That can fit into the Terrible Tuesdays in EPP, but it takes us a little bit away from the repeat sprint avatar that I think, even if you're general population, that's what your target, that's what you want to look at. You want to look like, rather. So there's room for all of these different things. And even then, somebody who just started with EPP, I don't know if he saw me, I don't remember if I talked about it, because obviously that was a long time ago. I'm pretty sure we filmed it during the lockdown, or maybe a little bit after the lockdown. I used to try back squats with 1 wheel and 2 wheels. It always kind of marked out for whatever the repetitions I was choosing. Instead of a total time, it mapped out to the same time. Where if I was going to do 20 reps 1 wheel, it seemed to take a minute, or like a minute 3, a minute 7, etc. And I would kind of look at the clock. How many reps would I get in a minute? Of course, it would go a little bit over, but then you would look at, all right, got 20 reps, 21 reps. 17 reps. Okay, so now I'm in the hole. And then after that 17, could I get back up to 19? So there's a lot of different ways. Now, is that an effective VO2? The cyclic repeat nature, probably not nearly as preferred as bike, rower, even kettlebells, where you might get a little bit of hypertrophy and some other things. But all the different modalities have different values. But when you look at Terrible Tuesday, we're attacking VO2, and when you have that moderate to light lactic environment that I mentioned before, that's where you can stimulate human growth hormone. That is a much different hormone overall for different individuals than some of the more popular anabolic hormones that we would get after on our developmental Monday and our stimulative Thursday. Human growth hormone can certainly be anabolic, but it doesn't have to be anabolic. And we'll see, that's why you'll see endurance athletes and all types of individuals looking to improve their performance probably indulge in that hormone, where it doesn't make you look like gigantic, particularly if you're not training for hypertrophy and or strength, or eating to support that type of hypertrophy. Some of the other things just take what you're using and shift it a little bit towards those goals under the same circumstances. Human growth hormone, my understanding, does work a little bit differently. And the reason we are always going after human growth hormone is the healing impact. It has nothing to do with any of the anabolic hypertrophy, etc. But if we're looking to break down tissues in an investment process, and then we're looking to actually build, then human growth hormone is a significant component. If there is a soft tissue injury, there is probably no hormone more effective for collagen synthesis than human growth hormone. So now the big message is that you have protocols and can spare the tissue that's injured and still get into these ranges of 30 to 80 seconds, balls out, 3 to 5 minutes rest. Some of these longer periods, maybe not as effective. Certain lifts for time in a circuit, if you will. I was just talking about using Terrible Tuesday with only the back squat. There's no reason you can't set up a circuit and create different impacts as far as 30 seconds and different rest periods, as long as you measure out in whatever you think is moderate to light lactic environment. Maybe that means we're going to have a talk test. Maybe that means you can look at your heart rate where you never get past a certain point. But if you're training intensely, you likely will start to accelerate building up. It's not just the time. It's also the effort that you put in through that time. And if you play your cards right, you can have injuries heal much, much quicker while you're continuing to maintain your fitness level for whenever you need to get back. That's a little bit of the backstory of Terrible Tuesday. I'm going to try to stick with that. I'll grow with it each week. Maybe I'll film a little bit of a training log, if you will, for that day. I usually do it on different days just based on where my schedule is, as long as I have access to the bike, including at the house. I certainly can't do most of the other things that I'm trying to do in other places. But that's what we're after, Terrible Tuesday. Let's get after human growth hormone. Let's get after VO2. And I think we can do it at the same time.